Good morning, sophomores. Happy Tuesday. What we're going to do really quick, because we're just going to review a couple of things that you can write down on your periodic table right when you get started on your common assessment, just to make sure that you guys have everything you need to be successful for the exam. And I know you guys are going to do fantastic, so I'm not worried one bit. Go ahead and take a look at the slide. Take out the following things: a blank piece of paper, a pencil, a periodic table, and a working calculator. If you don't actually have a calculator that is charged and ready to go for the common assessment, you need to let your teacher know immediately, please, so that they can request one from the front office for you before we get started. I'll give you 30 seconds to get these four things out. Go ahead. Okay, so just follow along with the slides on your blank sheet of paper, and we're going to go over three quick things that can help you on your chemistry common assessment. I mean, we've already covered the bulk of the stuff you need to know in class. These are just some last minute things that might help out a couple of you on a couple problems. All right, so let's take a look at the first thing, and the first thing I want you to do is draw the molar roadmap from memory. So on your blank sheet of paper, I want you to draw the shapes on the screen, and then try to fill in the blank spaces on the molar roadmap. I'll give you guys about, let's say 90 seconds to get this done. You can work with a partner if you want, if you can fill in the blank slides, and then I'll show you what it's supposed to look like right after. I'll give you 90 seconds starting now. Okay, you should have about wrapped up. I'm going to project what it should look like on the board. Okay, so here we are. Here's what the molar roadmap should look like. You have moles in the middle where you use the coefficients to convert back and forth. Why don't I give you just 30 seconds to look it over, and at the end of the 30 seconds, I want you to turn to your partner and tell them what you missed or what you forgot about. Okay, go ahead and turn to your partner. Tell them which part you forgot and which part you're not going to miss on the common assessment in about 30 minutes. Okay, now that we've all shared out and that we've had a chance to talk about it, let's go ahead and move on from this part, and hopefully you guys will be able to memorize this in a few minutes. You're going to have a few minutes at the end of the presentation to look over this again. Just remember, when you're looking at the molar roadmap from the last slide, here, down here at the bottom, the volume only works with 22.4 when it's at STP. If it isn't at STP, you have to use gas laws. So you should convert to moles and use PV equals nRT, or in some combination of using PV equals nRT. If they don't give you STP, you have to use gas laws. Okay, so don't try to use stoichiometry or 22.4 when it's not at STP. So just remember that. I've seen a couple of you try to do that, but most of you have got that down by now. All right, one last thing I wanted to go over that we haven't had a chance to review in a while is just how to name acids. I think sometimes we take for granted that we see the same acids in class over and over, and so we just need to just refresh our memories on how to do this. So if you look at the table on the board, you can see that where it says it has no oxygen, that's when the hydrostemic acid comes in. So things like hydrochloric acid, hydrobromic acid, hydrofluoric acid. All of those are examples of acids without an oxygen. So that's just a nonmetal bonded to a hydrogen at the front, because all acids obviously start with an H. If it ends with 8, or if the acid ends in ic, then that means it must have an 8 at the with the polyatomic ion. So things like chloric acid or fluoric acid or what's another one? Nitric acid, right? All of those have 8 as the polyatomic ion. If it has ite as the polyatomic ion, the stem is us, O-U-S. So chlorus, nitrous, those kind of acids have nitrite, okay? And you can always look them up, polyatomic ions, on the back of your periodic table. Remember the rule, atic-itis? I would definitely write this down now if you don't remember, and write it on your periodic table first thing when you walk in to the common assessment, so that you will remember this little trick, atic-itis, right? So if the polyatomic ion ends in 8, the acid must end in ic. If it ends in ite, it must end in OUS. Okay, so it's just been a while since we've talked about this, so I just wanted to refresh your memory. The steps to naming acids. Remember that you should identify the type of acid, so like we just talked about on the last slide, use the anion to determine the first part of the name, and then add acid to the end of the name. Okay, so let's practice with a couple of examples on this next slide. I'll give you guys about, let's say, a minute. You can go ahead and name as many of these acids as you can, and then we'll go through with it. Okay, that was a little over a minute, but let's stick with it here. So in this first acid that we're looking at, this is sulfate, ATE. So if it ends in 8, that means the acid must end in ic. So this becomes sulfuric acid, right? Because this ends in 8, this acid ends in ic, atic-itis. So if you look at this one, we can see there's no oxygen, so that means it has to start with a hydro. The stem is brom from bromine, and then it ends in an ic. So it's hydrobromic acid, right? No oxygen, so it has hydro at the front. Okay, so it's just the nonmetal bromine plus hydrogen. Here we have ClO2. This is chlorite. When you have something that ends in ite, that means the acid must end in us. So this is chlorous acid. So this is the itis part. Ite here with the ClO2, and then the us, OUS, with the chlorus. So when you write the formulas for these two, so the hydro at the front indicates, again, there's no oxygen down here. So if there's no oxygen, it's just hydrogen bonded with fluorine. And since hydrogen has a charge of +1 and fluorine is a charge of -1, they cancel out directly. Here's nitric acid. Since it ends in ic, that means the polyatomic ion must end in 8. ATE, so you look for nitrate, and it's just HNO3, and there's a nitrate bonded to a hydrogen there. Okay, hopefully that refreshed your memory a little bit on acids. So just give it your best shot. I know you guys are going to do great. Just a reminder for the free response strategies. I know we talked about this yesterday in class, but don't leave anything blank. Make sure that you're showing all units, even if you're not sure on what the answer is. Your answer is in the correct unit. So if they're looking for volume, that's liters. If they're looking for mass, that's grams, whatever, right? So you make sure you're getting that point for units, even if you're not sure how to solve the problem. There are only 3 acceptable answers when something changes. Remember, it's increasing, decreasing, or stays the same. Stay away from non-descriptive language like effects or changes or impacts or something like that. Increases, decreases, or stays the same. And remember, if it is a gas laws question, be sure to talk about the particles, right? Don't just mention that the pressure and volume and temperature are changing, but how does that impact the particles? Remember that if you increase temperature, particles speed up, which increases collisions, which causes pressure to go up. So all of these things are kind of connected, and we've talked about these a lot in class. So make sure that if they do ask you a gas laws question, talk about the particles. What is happening to the particles? Okay. Here's what the schedule looks like today. So you have science in the morning from 8:20 to 10:50. Then we're going to have lunch in your DAP. So wherever you're sitting right now, that is where you're going to have your lunch. And then for the second block today, you're going to have your ELA block in the afternoon from 12 to 2:30. And then you go home. Don't forget Spanish tomorrow, social studies or world history in the afternoon, and then finally math on the final block. Here's where you're stationed. You're supposed to stay in your DAP for both tests today. So actually you'll be in your rooms where you are right now for your tests. So we'll be testing in DAPs for chemistry and for English today. So if you're in Lane's DAP, you're in Lane's room. If you're in Cho's DAP, you're in Cho's room. And so on and so forth. Well, actually, no, you're not. You're not in those rooms, but you are in those DAPs. So take a look here at your room numbers and see what you have, see where you're supposed to be for the first test. It looks like we're in the A building on the second floor for the duration of the chemistry test, and I believe also for the English test. So looking back here, why don't you guys write down on your separate sheet of paper where you're supposed to go for the chemistry exam? Okay, and then for the English exam, write down where you're supposed to go as well on the separate sheet of paper. Okay, that's all I have to say for you guys. Best of luck. I know you guys are going to do great. Try your hardest for the next, 2 hours. I think that's how long it takes. You guys will do fantastic. I believe in you. You're totally ready. Good luck.